Hello everyone, glad to have you here. If this is your first time, don't forget to subscribe. It helps me bring you more stories like this. Now, get comfortable. It's time to dive into the story. San Francisco has fallen, 30 days into the zombie apocalypse. Now, let's get started. Day 30. That's how long it had been since the outbreak began. 30 days since the first reports of violent flu cases on the East Coast. 30 days since the airports shut down. Since the news anchors stopped smiling, since the word quarantine became a death sentence. And now San Francisco was falling. I woke to the sound of sirens. Not the distant wail of ambulances I'd grown used to, but sharp panicked bursts that echoed off the glass towers of Market Street. My apartment window rattled with the noise. I stumbled out of bed, heart pounding, and pulled the blinds aside. The city below was chaos. Police cruisers blocked intersections, their red-blue lights flashing against the darkened storefronts. Crowds surged between them, people screaming, shoving, scattering. Somewhere down the block, a car burned, its flames licking the night sky. The air was thick with smoke and the metallic tang of fear. Then the lights went out. One moment. Market Street glowed with neon signs and traffic signals. The next, everything plunged into darkness. The power grid had failed. The city's heartbeat stopped. I froze, staring at the sudden void. The only light came from the fires and the strobing police sirens. In that instant, San Francisco felt less like a city and more like a grave. Gunfire cracked below, sharp, deafening. I flinched, pressing against the glass. A police barricade had collapsed under the weight of the infected. I saw them. Shadows lurching forward, their movements jerky, their moans rising above the screams. Officers fired into the crowd, their radios spitting static. Unit 12, we're overrun. Repeat, mark it in 5th. The transmission cut off in a burst of static. I backed away from the window, my chest tight. My father's voice echoed in my head, a memory from years ago. Quiet keeps you alive. Stillness keeps you safe. But there was no quiet now. No stillness, only chaos. I grabbed my backpack from the corner of the room. Inside a half-empty water bottle, a flashlight, 3 protein bars, and the revolver I'd taken from an abandoned patrol car 2 weeks earlier. 6 bullets. That was all. The building shook as something slammed into the front doors below. Shouts echoed up the stairwell. My neighbors were panicking, their footsteps pounding the halls. Someone screamed, a high, desperate sound that cut off too quickly. I flicked off the flashlight, crouching in the dark. My breath came fast, ragged. I could hear them now, the infected clawing at the lobby doors, their guttural moans rising like a tide. I thought about staying, barricading the apartment, waiting it out. But the blackout changed everything. Without power, the city was blind. No lights, no alarms, no defenses. The infected would own the night. I slung the backpack over my shoulder and moved toward the fire escape. The metal rungs groaned under my weight as I climbed down, the cold air biting my skin. From the alley, I could see Market Street more clearly. Fires burned in clusters, casting long shadows across the pavement. The infected swarmed like ants, their bodies jerking, their eyes clouded. A police officer stumbled into view, his uniform torn, his radio dangling from his belt. He raised his pistol, firing wildly into the horde. For a moment, I thought he might make it. Then they dragged him down, his screams echoing off the buildings. I pressed myself against the wall, bile rising in my throat. My hands shook around the revolver. I wanted to help him, but I was just a kid with 6 bullets and no training. My father's voice came again. Don't be a hero. Heroes die first. The officer's screams faded. The infected fed in silence. I slipped into the shadows, moving east toward the ferry building. If there was any chance of escape, it would be by water. The bridges were already choked with fire and wreckage. The bay was the only way out. As I crept through the alleys, the blackout pressed down on me like a weight. Every corner hid danger. Every shadow whispered death. The city I had grown up in, the city of lights, of cable cars, and crowded piers was gone. And San Francisco had fallen overnight. And I was still here. The blackout had turned San Francisco into a tomb. But the bridge still stood like a promise. The Golden Gate, red steel against the night sky, its towers rising above the bay like sentinels. If there was any way out of the city, it was across that span. I wasn't the only one who thought so. By dawn, hundreds of survivors had gathered at the base of the bridge. Families clutching children, men dragging suitcases, women carrying backpacks stuffed with whatever they could salvage. The air was thick with smoke and salt, the cries of gulls drowned out by the moans of the infected echoing from the city behind us. The military had set up a checkpoint at the toll plaza. Sandbags, barbed wire, Humvees with mounted guns. Soldiers barked orders, their rifles raised, their faces hidden behind helmets and visors. Stay in line. Keep moving. Their voices cracked with exhaustion, but they still clung to procedure. I joined the line, clutching my backpack, the revolver hidden inside. Emily, no, not yet. She wasn't with me then. Back then, it was just me. Just a kid trying to look older, trying to look like I belonged. The line moved slowly, every step dragging us closer to the bridge. I could see the span stretching out ahead, its cables vanishing into the fog. The bay churned below, dark and endless. On the far side, Moraine County waited like another world. But the infected didn't wait. They came from the city, spilling down the highway in a tide of bodies. Their moans rose above the crowd, a sound that froze the blood. Panic rippled through the survivors. People screamed, shoved, tried to push forward. The soldiers shouted, firing into the horde, muzzle flashes lighting the fog. Hold the line, one officer roared. His voice breaking. The first infected hit the barricade, slamming into the sandbags, clawing at the wire. Soldiers fired point blank, their rifles rattling, blood sprayed across the pavement. But for everyone that fell, 3 more surged forward. The crowd broke. People screamed, rushing the checkpoint, trampling each other in their desperation. Soldiers tried to hold them back, but the tide was too strong. I was swept forward, my feet barely touching the ground, my body pressed between strangers. The smell of sweat and fear was suffocating. Then the explosion came. A deafening roar shook the bridge, flames erupting from the far span. The shockwave knocked me to the ground, my ears ringing. I looked up and saw fire blooming across the steel. Black smoke curling into the sky. The middle of the bridge was gone, collapsed into the bay below. The Golden Gate was broken. Screams filled the air. Survivors stumbled back, their faces pale with horror. Soldiers shouted into radios, their voices frantic. Command, this is Checkpoint Delta. The span is compromised. Repeat. The span is gone. The infected didn't care. They surged forward, climbing over the barricades, their hands clawing, their teeth snapping. A soldier fell, dragged into the horde, his screams cut short. Another fired until his rifle clicked empty, then swung it like a club until he disappeared beneath the tide. I scrambled to my feet, my chest heaving. The bridge was gone. The city was lost. There was nowhere left to run. I turned and fled, shoving through the panicked crowd, my heart pounding. Behind me, the Golden Gate burned, its towers glowing red in the firelight. The symbol of San Francisco, the promise of escape, was collapsing into ash. I didn't look back again. After the bridge collapsed, the city scattered like ants from a burning nest. Some ran toward the piers, others into the hills. But I turned east, deeper into the city. The smoke from the Golden Gate still smeared the sky, and the sound of gunfire echoed across the bay. My legs carried me without thought through alleys and side streets until the red lanterns of Chinatown appeared through the haze. It was there I found the barricades. The community had fortified itself, sealing off Grant Avenue with steel shutters and overturned delivery trucks. Wooden boards were nailed across storefronts, and the smell of incense mixed with the acrid stench of gasoline. A handful of men stood guard with baseball bats, machetes, and one battered shotgun. Their faces were grim, their eyes hollow, but they stood their ground. When I stumbled into view, one of them raised his weapon. "Stop. Who are you?" I froze, hands raised. "Just me. I'm not bitten." They studied me for a long moment before lowering the barrel. A woman stepped forward, her hair streaked with gray, her voice steady. "Come inside quickly." They pulled me through the barricade, sealing it behind me with chains and padlocks. Inside, the streets were quieter, families huddled in doorways, children clutching stuffed animals, elders whispering prayers. The neon signs were dark, but candles flickered in the windows, casting long shadows across the pavement. For the first time since the blackout, I felt something like safety. They gave me water, a stale bun, a place to sit. I listened as they spoke in hurried tones, their words a mix of English and Cantonese. They had been holding out for days, scavenging food from shuttered restaurants, boiling water from rooftop tanks. They had radios, too. Police scanners crackling with broken transmissions. Unit 45, Chinatown perimeter holding, supplies low, requesting backup. The voice was faint, distorted, but it was proof we weren't alone. That night, I sat with the guards at the barricade. The city beyond was silent, save for the occasional moan drifting through the fog. One of the men, a former shopkeeper named Lee, handed me a flashlight. "Keep it low," he warned. "Light draws them." We spoke in whispers. He told me about the first days, how the infected had swarmed Portsmouth Square, how families had fled into basement, how they had lost more people than they could count. His voice cracked when he mentioned his wife. He didn't say what happened, but I knew. The quiet was almost comforting. Almost. Then the pounding began. It started as a faint thud, like someone knocking on a door. Then it grew louder, heavier, until the steel shutters rattled on their hinges. The infected had found us. Their moans rose, guttural and hungry, echoing down the narrow streets. Children screamed. Mothers pulled them close, whispering prayers. The guards tightened their grips on their weapons, their faces pale in the candlelight. Lee cursed under his breath. "They won't stop. They never stop." The barricade shook as the infected slammed against it. Their hands clawing at the steel, their teeth snapping, the chains groaned, the padlocks rattled. I pressed my back against the wall, my revolver heavy in my hand. 6 bullets. That was all. The pounding grew louder, the shutters buckling inward. Dust rained from the rooftops. The infected moaned in unison, a chorus of hunger that made my skin crawl. The woman with gray hair shouted orders, her voice sharp. "Reinforce the barricade. Bring the barrels." Men rushed forward, rolling oil drums into place, stacking crates against the doors. The barricade groaned, but held for now. I raised my revolver, my hands trembling. My father's voice echoed in my head. "Quiet keeps you alive. Stillness keeps you safe." But there was no quiet now. No stillness. Only the sound of the den pounding at the gates. The children cried. The elders prayed. The guards braced themselves. And I realized with a cold certainty that Chinatown was not a sanctuary. It was a trap. The barricade would not hold forever. The barricades in Chinatown had held for one night, but I knew they wouldn't hold forever. The pounding on the shutters, the moans in the fog, the way the chains rattled. It was only a matter of time. When word spread that boats were leaving from the ferry building, people started whispering about escape. The bay was the last hope. I left before dawn, slipping through an alley with a small group of survivors. The streets were littered with broken glass and abandoned cars. Their alarms long dead. The air smelled of salt and smoke. The fog rolling in thick from the water. Every step echoed too loudly. Every shadow felt alive. When we reached the Embarcadero, the scene was worse than I imagined. Hundreds of people crowded the piers. Their voices rising in panic. Families clutched bags. Children cried. Men shouted at soldiers who stood guard near the docks. The ferry building loomed above us. Its clock tower shrouded in fog. Its windows shattered. The soldiers were overwhelmed. Their Humvees blocked the street. Their rifles raised. But the crowd pressed closer, desperate. One at a time. Boats are at capacity. One of them shouted, his voice cracking. But no one listened. I pushed through the throng, my backpack tight against my chest. The smell of sweat and fear was suffocating. People shoved, clawed, screamed. A woman fell, her child ripped from her arms by the tide of bodies. I tried to help her, but the crowd swallowed her whole. At the pier, a ferry rocked against the dock, its deck already packed with survivors. The soldiers shouted for order, but the mob surged forward, spilling onto the gangway. The boat groaned under the weight, its hull dipping dangerously low. Gunfire cracked. Soldiers fired into the air, trying to scatter the crowd, but panic had taken hold. People trampled each other, their screams rising above the gulls, the gangway buckled, the ferry tilting as more bodies pressed aboard. Then the infected came. They spilled onto the Embarcadero from the north, their moans cutting through the chaos. The crowd shrieked, torn between the soldiers' rifles and the dead closing in. The infected moved fast, their bodies jerking, their eyes clouded. They slammed into the crowd, dragging people down, tearing into flesh. The pier became a slaughterhouse. I stumbled back, my revolver heavy in my hand. 6 bullets, that was all. I fired once, the recoil jarring my arm, the shot tearing through an infected skull, the crowd screamed louder, the sound of gunfire and moans blending into a single deafening roar. The ferry's engines roared to life, its horn blaring. Soldiers shoved people back, trying to clear the gangway. But it was too late. The boat was overloaded, its deck swaying under the weight. I saw the captain shouting from the wheelhouse, his face pale with fear. The ferry lurched. For a moment, it seemed like it might hold. Then the hull tilted sharply, water rushing over the side. People screamed, clinging to the rails, their bodies sliding into the bay. The gangway snapped, plunging dozens into the water. The ferry groaned, its deck splitting, and then it capsized, vanishing beneath the waves. The screams echoed across the bay, then faded into silence. Only the gulls remained. Circling above the wreckage. The soldiers fell back, their rifles spitting fire, but the infected kept coming. The crowd scattered, fleeing into the streets, their hopes drowned with the ferry. I ran with them, my chest burning, my legs trembling. Behind me, the ferry building loomed like a tomb, its clock frozen, its tower swallowed by fog. The bay had been our last hope, and it was gone. I ducked into an alley, pressing my back against the wall, my breath ragged, my hands shook around the revolver, my ears still ringing with screams. I thought of the woman who had lost her child, of the soldiers firing into the air, of the ferry sinking beneath the waves. San Francisco was dying. And the water would not save us. I left the Embarcadero with the sound of drowning still in my ears. The ferry had gone under, the bay swallowing hundreds of voices at once. I walked east, away from the water, away from the screams until the city grew quiet again. That's when I met him. He was sitting on the steps of a shuttered cafe. His ranger's hat tilted low, his uniform torn, but still recognizable. A California State Parks patch clung stubbornly to his sleeve. His rifle rested across his knees, the barrel blackened with soot. When he saw me, he didn't raise the weapon. He just studied me with tired eyes. "You're too young to be out here alone," he said. His voice was steady, but there was something hollow in it, like a man who had already buried too much. I froze, my hand hovering near the revolver in my pack. "I'm not bitten," I said quickly. He nodded once. "Good, sit." I hesitated, then lowered myself onto the curb across from him. The street was empty, the fog curling between us like smoke. For a moment, it felt almost normal, like two strangers waiting for a bus that would never come. "My name's Harper," he said finally. "Ranger Harper, or it used to be." I didn't give him my name. "Not yet." He reached into his pack and pulled out a folded map, the paper creased and stained. He spread it across his knee, pointing to the city. "I've been tracking the spread since day one. They move like water, filling the low places first, then spilling over. San Francisco's already gone. The bridges are down. The ferries sunk. The city's a bowl and it's full." His finger traced north toward Moran. "Some made it across early. Rangers, deputies, a few families. They're holding the line in the hills, but they won't hold forever." I stared at the map, the inked patrol routes, the notes scrolled in the margins. It was more order than I'd seen in weeks. "So, what do we do?" I asked. Harper's eyes lifted to mine. "You keep moving. You don't stop. And you don't trust walls." His words hit me harder than the gunfire, harder than the screams. Don't trust walls. I thought of Chinatown's barricades, of the Presidio's fences, of every place people had tried to hold. He was right. They always fell. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket, its cover worn, its pages filled with tight handwriting. Patrol logs, survival codes, notes on behavior. He flipped to a page and read aloud, Rule 1, quiet keeps you alive. Rule 2, stillness keeps you safe. Rule 3, never believe in rescue. I felt my chest tighten. My father's words echoed in a stranger's voice. Harper closed the notebook, tucking it away. I've seen too many die, waiting for help that never came. The city's finished. If you want to live, you head inland. The mountains, the forests, they'll buy you time. I wanted to believe him, but I also wanted to believe in something more. In rescue, in safety, in walls that held. Why are you still here? I asked. He looked down at his rifle, his jaw tightening. Because I promised I'd wait. My partner went back into the city for survivors. She hasn't come out. Not yet. The silence between us was heavy. I didn't know what to say. Finally, Harper stood, slinging the rifle over his shoulder. You should go, he said. Head east. Don't look back. I rose slowly, my legs trembling. What about you? He adjusted his hat, his eyes scanning the fog. I'll wait a little longer, but if she doesn't come back by nightfall, he trailed off, his voice breaking. Then he straightened, his tone hard again. Remember what I told you? Don't trust walls. He turned and walked into the mist, his silhouette fading until he was gone. I stood there clutching my pack, the map burned into my memory. The city groaned around me, its towers shrouded in smoke, its streets echoing with distant moans. Ranger Harper's warning echoed louder than the sirens, louder than the screams. San Francisco was already gone. After Ranger Harper vanished into the fog, I wandered south, deeper into the city's ruins. His warning echoed in my head. Don't trust walls. But I still found myself drawn to them. Humans can't help it. We build fences, stack sandbags, nail boards across windows, as if wood and steel can keep the dead out. That's how I ended up in a warehouse near south of Market. A group of survivors had fortified it, dragging shipping containers into a rough perimeter, welding doors shut, stringing barbed wire across the roof. From the outside, it looked like a fortress. From the inside, it felt like a cage. There were maybe 30 of us, families, loners, a few ex-cops who had taken charge. They wore their uniforms like armor, even though the badges meant nothing now. They barked orders, rationed food, and kept their pistols close. At first, I thought it was safety. They gave me a cot in the corner, a bowl of canned beans, a place by the fire barrel. I listened as they argued in low voices, their words sharp. Supplies were running low. The last scavenging run had come back empty. The infected were pressing closer every night. Tension hung in the air like smoke. One evening, the leader, a broad-shouldered sergeant named Doyle, stood before us, his voice booming. "We've got enough food for 2 weeks if we stretch it, but that means strict rations. No exceptions." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A mother clutched her child tighter. An old man shook his head. Doyle's deputies glared at anyone who spoke too loudly. That night, I lay awake listening to the whispers. People were scared, hungry, angry, and anger in the apocalypse is more dangerous than the infected. The betrayal came 2 nights later. I woke to the sound of footsteps. Soft, hurried, I sat up, clutching my revolver, and saw a figure moving through the shadows. A man, thin, his face gaunt. He crept toward the supply crates, glancing over his shoulder. I recognized him. His name was Harris. He had a wife once, but she hadn't made it past the first week. He kept to himself, always quiet, always watching. Now he was stealing. He pried open a crate, stuffing cans into his pack. His hands shook, his breath ragged. I wanted to shout to stop him, but my voice caught in my throat. If I called out, Doyle's men would kill him. If I stayed silent, the rest of us would starve sooner. Harris turned, his eyes meeting mine in the dark. For a moment, we just stared at each other. His face was pale, desperate. He raised a finger to his lips, begging for silence. I didn't move. Then he was gone, slipping through a gap in the containers, vanishing into the night. By morning, the supplies were lighter. Doyle's men discovered the theft, their voices rising in fury. "Someone betrayed us," Doyle roared, slamming his fist against the crate. "Someone here is a thief," the crowd murmured, eyes darting, suspicion spreading like fire. Neighbors glared at each other, whispers turning to accusations. The fragile trust we had built cracked in an instant. I stayed silent. I didn't tell them about Harris. Maybe I should have. Maybe it would have saved lives, but I couldn't. I saw the desperation in his eyes, the hunger that drove him. And I knew deep down that I might have done the same. That night, the warehouse felt colder. The fire burned low, the shadows deeper. People huddled in corners, clutching their food, their weapons. No one trusted anyone anymore. The infected were outside moaning in the dark, their hands scraping against the steel walls. But inside, something worse had taken root. Fear. And betrayal. The warehouse fell apart faster than I expected. After Harris stole the food, suspicion poisoned the air. People stopped sharing, stopped speaking, stopped trusting. By the third night, the infected pressed too close and the barricades buckled. I slipped out before dawn, following the sound of gunfire rolling across the city like thunder. That's how I found the Presidio. The old military base sat on the northern edge of San Francisco, its barracks and parade grounds overlooking the bay. Once it had been a museum, a park, a place for tourists. Now it was a fortress again. Sandbags lined the gates, Humvees blocked the roads, and soldiers patrolled the perimeter with rifles at the ready. Floodlights cut through the fog, their beams sweeping across the grass. For the first time in weeks, I saw order. A soldier stopped me at the gate, his rifle raised. "Hands up." I froze, lifting my arms. "I'm not bitten," I said, my voice shaking. He studied me, then lowered the weapon slightly. "Kid, you're lucky you made it this far. Get inside." They pulled me through the checkpoint, past the barricades, into the heart of the base. Inside, the Presidio buzzed with life. Civilians huddled in tents. Children clung to their parents. Medics treated the wounded in makeshift clinics. Soldiers barked orders, their boots striking the pavement in unison. For a moment, I let myself believe. They gave me water, a blanket, a place near the fire barrels. I listened as the officers spoke, their voices clipped. Precise. Sector 3 is compromised. Reinforce the perimeter. No civilians beyond the fence. The rules were clear. Civilians stayed inside. Soldiers fought outside. Anyone who broke the rules was punished. That night, I sat near the fire watching the soldiers march. Their uniforms were torn, their faces pale, but they moved with discipline. They spoke in codes, their radios crackling with call signs. Alpha 1 perimeter clear. Bravo 2 holding position. It was the language of authority, of control. But beneath it, I saw the cracks. The rations were thin, the supplies dwindling. The soldiers whispered about convoys that never returned, about commanders who had gone silent. The fences were strong, but not unbreakable. And every night the infected tested them, their moans drifting through the fog, their hands clawing at the wire. On the third night, the alarm sounded. A siren wailed across the base, sharp and shrill. Floodlights snapped on, sweeping the perimeter. Soldiers shouted, their rifles rattling. The infected had breached the outer fence. I ran to the barricade, my heart pounding. I saw them, dozens of infected, their bodies jerking, their eyes clouded, their moans rising above the gunfire. They slammed against the sandbags, clawing, biting, pushing forward. The soldiers fired in bursts, their voices steady. "Hold the line. Hold the line." Muzzle flashes lit the night. The smell of gunpowder thick in the air. For a moment, it seemed like they might hold. The infected fell in heaps, their bodies piling against the barricade. The soldiers reloaded, their movements precise, their faces grim. But then the fence buckled. The infected surged forward, pouring through the gap. Soldiers shouted. Civilians screamed. Chaos erupted. I stumbled back, my revolver heavy in my hand, my chest tight. A soldier grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the barracks. "Stay behind the line, kid." His voice was sharp, commanding, but his eyes were wide with fear. The infected swarmed the parade ground, their moans echoing off the walls. Soldiers fired, civilians fled, the base collapsing into chaos. I pressed myself against the wall, my breath ragged, my hands trembling. The Presidio had been a fortress, a stronghold, a promise of safety. And now it was just another trap. Ranger Harper's words echoed in my head. Don't trust walls. He had been right. The Presidio had been a fortress, but even fortresses burn. After the breach, I fled with a handful of survivors, following the twisting streets east. The fog clung to the hills, muffling the gunfire behind us. My legs ached, my lungs burned, but I kept moving. That's how we reached Lombard Street. The crooked road wound down the hill like a snake, its brick pavement slick with mist. Once tourists had crowded here, snapping photos of the famous curves. Now it was silent, too silent. The houses on either side loomed dark, their windows shattered, their gardens overgrown. We thought we were safe. Then the fire came. It started at the top of the hill. A sudden bloom of orange against the fog. Flames licked the rooftops, spreading fast, carried by gasoline and intent. Raiders. I saw them silhouetted in the glow. Men with torches, their faces hidden by scarves, their laughter echoing down the street. They weren't here for supplies. They were here to burn. The fire raced downhill, devouring everything in its path. The heat hit us like a wave. The smoke choking our lungs. Survivors screamed, scattering into the gardens, the alleys, anywhere they could run. The flames roared, the crack of wood splitting, filling the night. I stumbled, clutching my revolver, my chest tight. 6 bullets, always 6. But bullets couldn't stop fire. A woman beside me fell, her clothes catching flame. She screamed, rolling on the pavement, her hands clawing at the air. I reached for her, but the heat drove me back, the smoke blinding me, her screams cut off too quickly. The raiders moved closer, their torches raised, their shadows long against the burning walls. One of them shouted, his voice sharp, "Drive them out. Smoke them into the street." We were trapped. The crooked road that had once been a postcard was now a funnel of fire. The flames closed in from above, the raiders from behind. The only way out was down. I ran. The bricks were slick beneath my boots, the smoke stinging my eyes. The fire chased me, its heat searing my back. I heard the moans then, low, guttural, rising from the bottom of the hill. The infected, drawn by the fire, the screams, the chaos. They surged up the street, their bodies jerking, their eyes clouded, their moans mixed with the roar of the flames, a chorus of hunger and destruction. I skidded to a stop, my heart slamming against my ribs. Fire above, raiders behind, infected below. No way out. The survivors around me panicked, their voices rising in terror. A man shoved past me, sprinting straight into the horde. They dragged him down in seconds, his screams lost in the fire. Another tried to climb a garden wall, but the flames caught him, his body silhouetted against the night. I pressed myself against the wall, my revolver shaking in my hand. 6 bullets. I could fight, but not win. Not here. Then I saw it. A narrow alley cutting between 2 houses, half hidden by smoke. I shoved toward it, coughing, my lungs burning. A woman followed, clutching a child to her chest, her eyes wide with fear. We stumbled into the alley, the fire roaring behind us, the infected moaning at our backs. The alley twisted, narrow and dark, the smoke curling through it like a living thing. We ran until our legs gave out, collapsing against a chain-link fence. The woman sobbed, clutching her child, whispering prayers. I pressed my forehead against the cold metal, my chest heaving. Behind us, Lombard Street burned. The crooked road was a river of fire. The houses collapsing. The screams fading into the roar. The city was eating itself. And we were just running through its teeth. We escaped Lombard Street with the fire still burning behind us. The crooked road glowing like a fuse lit across the city. The woman and her child who had followed me into the alley were gone by morning, vanished into the fog, leaving only footprints in the ash. I kept moving because stopping meant death. That's when I met the sheriff. It happened near the marina where the streets opened wide and the bay wind cut sharp through the smoke. A convoy of trucks rolled in from the north, their engines rumbling, their headlights cutting through the haze. Men in brown uniforms rode in the beds, rifles slung across their shoulders. At the front, a black and white patrol car with a cracked windshield and a sheriff's star still painted on the door. The convoy stopped in the middle of the street. The man who stepped out of the car was tall, broad-shouldered, his badge glinting in the firelight. His hat was pulled low, his jaw set hard. Sheriff Dalton, Moraine County. He looked at us, at the ragged survivors who had gathered in the street, drawn by the sound of engines. His voice carried like a hammer striking steel. Listen up. San Francisco is finished. The bridges are gone. The ferries sunk. The Presidio overrun. You've got 2 choices. Come north with us or stay here and die. The crowd murmured, shifting uneasily. Some clutched their children, others their weapons. A man shouted back, his voice, "Why should we trust you? You're just another uniform with promises. Dalton's eyes narrowed. He raised his shotgun, the barrel gleaming. Because I'm the last law you've got, and law is the only thing keeping this world from tearing itself apart. His deputies fanned out, their rifles raised, their boots striking the pavement in unison. They moved with precision, their faces hard. Authority radiated from them like heat. Dalton continued, his voice steady. We've secured Marin. We've got food, water, shelter, but we don't take everyone. We take the strong, the useful. If you can't pull your weight, you don't come. The words hit like a slap. Families clutched each other tighter, fear flashing in their eyes. A woman begged, holding her child forward. Please, she's just a girl. Dalton cut her off. Children eat. They don't fight. They don't build. We don't have room for dead weight. The crowd erupted, voices rising in anger. You can't do this. We're all that's left. You're no better than the raiders. Dalton didn't flinch. He raised his shotgun and fired into the air. The blast echoed off the buildings, silencing the crowd. Smoke curled from the barrel as he lowered it again. Order or chaos, he said coldly. That's the choice, and I won't let chaos win. Then it happened. A man broke from the crowd, lunging toward the supply truck. His hands clawed at the crates, desperation etched into his face. One of Dalton's deputies stepped forward, his rifle snapping up. A single shot rang out. The man dropped, blood pooling on the pavement. The crowd screamed, stumbling back, their faces pale with horror. The woman with the child sobbed, clutching her daughter to her chest. Dalton didn't blink. This is the law now, he said. Follow it or fall. I stood frozen, my heart pounding, my revolver heavy in my hand. 6 bullets, always 6. But what good were 6 bullets against men who believed they were the last law left in the world? Dalton's eyes swept the crowd, hard and unyielding. For a moment, they locked on mine. I felt the weight of his gaze. The cold certainty in it. He wasn't bluffing. He wasn't pretending. He believed every word. The deputies began herding people toward the trucks. Their rifles steady, their voices sharp. Some went willingly, clinging to the promise of safety. Others resisted, their cries cut short by the crack of gunfire. I backed into the shadows, my breath ragged, my chest tight. I couldn't go with them. Not after what I'd seen. Not after the man on the pavement. Sheriff Dalton's voice carried through the smoke. Final and absolute. North or nothing. That's the law. After the sheriff's ultimatum, I couldn't follow. His law was too sharp, too cold. And I'd already seen what his deputies did to those who resisted. So I slipped away, heading east through the fog, my boots crunching glass and ash. That's when I saw the hospital St. Mary's. The sign still hung above the entrance, its letters cracked, its lights long dead. The front doors were shattered, the lobby dark. Hospitals had been the first to fall. Too many sick, too many desperate, too many dead. But I needed medicine, bandages, anything that could keep me alive. Inside, the air was heavy with mildew and rot. The smell of bleach lingered faintly, like a ghost of order that had long since fled. My flashlight beam cut across overturned gurneys. Shattered 4 bags. Blood smeared on the tiles. The silence pressed in, broken only by the drip of water somewhere deep in the halls. I moved slowly. My revolver in one hand, the flashlight in the other. 6 bullets, always 6. The walls were covered in messages, scrolled in marker and blood. Help us. They're inside. Don't open the doors. Each word was a scream frozen in time. I passed the ER, its doors hanging open. Inside, stretchers lay abandoned, sheets stained dark. A wheelchair sat overturned, its wheels still spinning faintly in the draft. My beam caught a clipboard on the floor. Patient intake forms, names, and dates scribbled in panic. The last entry was day 3. The sound came then, a faint shuffle echoing down the hall. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The beam of my flashlight trembled as I raised it. The hall stretched long and empty, doors yawning open on either side. The shuffle came again, closer this time, followed by a low moan. I backed into a supply closet, pulling the door shut, my heart pounding. Through the slats, I saw them too infected. Their hospital gowns torn, their skin pale and mottled. Their wrists were still strapped with restraints, for lines dangling from their arms. They shuffled slowly, their heads jerking, their moans echoing off the walls. They passed without seeing me, their shadows stretching long across the tiles. I waited until the sound faded, then slipped back into the hall. The pharmacy was locked, its steel gate pulled down. I knelt, prying at the lock with a piece of rebar. My hands shook, sweat dripping down my face. Every sound echoed too loudly. Every breath felt like a beacon. Finally, the lock snapped, the gate rattling open. Inside, shelves lined the walls, half empty, bottles scattered across the floor. I grabbed what I could. Bandages, antibiotics, painkillers, stuffing them into my pack. My hands moved fast, but my ears strained for every sound. That's when I heard it. A voice, faint, broken, echoing through the intercom system. Help. Anyone, please. I froze. My chest tight. The intercom crackled again. The voice distorted. Still here. Basement. Trapped. Someone alive. I should have left. I should have run with the supplies. But the voice pulled me deeper down the stairwell into the basement. The air grew colder, the smell stronger. My flashlight flickered across pipes dripping with condensation. Walls stained with mold. At the end of the hall, a door stood half open. The voice came from inside, faint and desperate. I pushed the door open. The room was empty. The intercom speaker crackled on the wall, repeating the same broken plea. Help, anyone, please. A recording, a loop. And then I heard the moan from the shadows. They came, dozens of them, their hospital gowns dragging, their restraints clattering, their eyes glowed faintly in the beam of my light, their moans rising in unison. It had been a trap. I stumbled back, my revolver shaking in my hand. 6 bullets, always 6. The moans filled the basement, echoing off the walls, growing louder, closer. The hospital wasn't a sanctuary. It was an echo chamber of the dead. After the hospital, I needed air. The stink of mildew and blood clung to me. The echoes of moans still rattling in my skull. I climbed until the streets opened wide, until the fog thinned enough to reveal the silhouette of Sutro Tower stabbing into the sky. 3 red spires, steel bones rising above the city. Once it had carried television and radio across the bay. Now it was just another skeleton. But I thought if anything could push my voice beyond the ruins, it would be that tower. The climb was brutal. The hill was steep. The fog thick. The silence broken only by the crunch of glass under my boots. The city sprawled below, a graveyard of lights long extinguished. Fires still smoldered in the distance. The Golden Gate, a black scar against the bay. At the base of the tower, the gate hung open, its chain-link fence torn. The control building was dark, its windows shattered, its walls tagged with desperate messages. We tried. No signal. God forgive us. Inside, the equipment was gutted. Panels ripped open, wires dangling like entrails, but the tower still hummed faintly, a low vibration that thrummed through the floor. I found a console half intact, its dials cracked, but functional. A microphone lay on the desk, its cord frayed, but still connected. I sat down, my hands trembling. The revolver lay beside me, 6 bullets gleaming in the dim light. I pressed the button, the red bulb flickering weakly. This is my voice cracked. I swallowed hard. This is day 30. San Francisco has fallen. The bridges are gone. The ferries sunk. The Presidio overrun. If anyone can hear me, we're still here. The words echoed in the empty room, swallowed by static. I tried again, my voice steadier. My name doesn't matter. What matters is this. We lived. We fought. We're still fighting. If you're out there, if you can hear me, you're not alone. The static hissed, sharp and endless. I leaned closer, my chest tight. I don't know how much longer the city will hold. Raiders are burning the streets. The infected are everywhere. But if you're listening, if anyone is listening, please answer. I let go of the button. The silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. For a moment, I thought it was hopeless, just another voice lost in the void. Then the static shifted. A faint crackle, a distortion, like a whisper buried in the noise. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The sound grew louder, the static bending, breaking. Lo, anyone? My heart slammed against my ribs. A voice, faint, broken, but real. I grabbed the microphone, my hands shaking. Yes, I hear you. This is San Francisco, day 30. Please say again. The static roared, swallowing the words, then faintly, not alone. Hold north. The signal cut, the hiss returning sharp and merciless. I slammed the button again, shouting into the void. Repeat, please repeat. Where are you? Who are you? Nothing, just static. I sat back, my chest heaving, my hands trembling. The voice had been real. I wasn't imagining it. Someone was out there north, holding for the first time in weeks. I felt something I hadn't dared to feel. Hope. But hope is dangerous. Hope makes you reckless. Hope makes you believe in walls, in rescue, in promises that crumble. Ranger Harper's warning echoed in my head. Don't trust walls. Don't believe in rescue. And yet, the voice lingered. Not alone. Hold. North. I packed the supplies, slung the revolver at my side, and stepped back into the fog. The tower loomed above me, its red lights blinking faintly against the night. The city was still burning. The dead were still moaning. The sheriff's law still cut sharp. But somewhere beyond the ruins, someone was alive. And they were waiting. The voice from Sutro Tower still echoed in my head. Not alone. Hold north. It was the first spark of hope I'd felt in weeks. But hope makes you reckless. It makes you believe in things you shouldn't. That's how I ended up at Twin Peaks. The fog was thick that night, rolling over the hills like a tide. The city stretched below, a graveyard of lights swallowed by smoke. Survivors had gathered there, drawn by the promise of high ground, of safety. I joined them, my revolver heavy at my side, my pack digging into my shoulders. Sheriff Dalton was there, too. His convoy had made it up the winding road, his deputies fanning out with rifles raised, their headlights cut through the mist, their engines rumbling low. Dalton stood tall, his badge glinting faintly, his voice carrying sharp through the fog. North is the only way, he said. We move at dawn. Anyone who slows us down stays behind. The crowd murmured, fear and anger mixing in their voices. Families clutched each other. Loners shifted uneasily. I stayed near the edge, watching, listening. That's when the shots rang out. Sharp cracks echoing through the fog. The crowd screamed, scattering, figures emerged from the mist. Raiders, their faces hidden, their rifles spitting fire. The air filled with smoke and gunpowder, the screams of the wounded rising above it all. Dalton's deputies fired back, their voices sharp. Hold the line. Push them back. Muzzle flashes lit the fog. Shadows jerking and twisting. The hilltop became a battlefield. Chaos swallowing order in seconds. I dropped to the ground, my heart pounding, my ears ringing. The fog was so thick I could barely see 10 feet ahead. Shapes moved in the mist. Some friend, some foe, some infected drawn by the noise. The world dissolved into shadows and screams. I crawled toward the edge of the hill, my revolver shaking in my hand. 6 bullets, always 6, I fired once. The shot tearing through a raider's chest. He fell without a sound. Swallowed by the fog. The crowd panicked, scattering in every direction. Families fled down the hillside, their cries lost in the mist. Raiders pressed forward, their torches glowing faintly, their laughter sharp. Dalton's deputies shouted, their rifles rattling, but the line was breaking. Then I saw him, Sheriff Dalton, standing tall in the chaos, his shotgun raised. For a moment, I thought he would hold. His voice cut through the fog, steady and cold. Stand your ground. Don't give an inch. But then he was gone. One moment he was there. The next the fog swallowed him. His deputies shouted his name, their voices frantic. Sheriff, Sheriff. But there was no answer. The line collapsed. Raiders surged forward. Their torches lighting the fog. The infected moaned, their shadows jerking closer. The survivors screamed, fleeing into the night. The hilltop burned, the fog glowing orange with fire. I stumbled back, my chest heaving, my legs trembling. The woman with the child from Lombard Street appeared beside me, her face pale, her eyes wide. Which way? She begged. I didn't know. The fog pressed in. The fire roared. The moans grew louder. The city below was gone. The sheriff vanished. The survivors scattered. Twin Peaks had been a promise of safety, of high ground, of hope. But it was just another trap. I grabbed the woman's arm, pulling her toward the trees. We ran down the hillside, the fog swallowing us, the screams fading behind. My revolver was empty now, the weight of it useless in my hand. At the bottom of the hill, I collapsed against a tree, my chest burning. The woman clutched her child, sobbing quietly. The fog curled around us, heavy and suffocating. Sheriff Dalton was gone. The law was gone. And in the silence that followed, I realized something. The betrayal wasn't just the raiders in the fog. It wasn't just Dalton vanishing when we needed him most. The betrayal was hope itself. From Twin Peaks, the city stretched below like a corpse, its bones lit by fire. The fog glowed orange, the smoke rising in pillars. But it was the bridge that drew my eyes. The Golden Gate, once proud and unshakable, now burning. I made my way north through streets littered with ash and silence. The woman and her child had vanished into the fog like so many others. I was alone again, my revolver heavy at my side, my pack digging into my shoulders. Every step carried me closer to the bay, closer to the bridge. When I reached Crissy Field, the sight stopped me cold. The Golden Gate was aflame. Its towers glowed red against the night, its cables snapping like whips in the fire. Cars lay abandoned across the span, their horns blaring weakly, their metal twisted by heat. The water below churned black, reflecting the fire like a mirror of hell. Survivors had gathered on the shore. Their faces pale, their voices hushed. Some wept openly, others just stared, their eyes hollow. The bridge had been more than steel and concrete. It had been hope, a way out, a promise, and now it was collapsing. I stood among them, my chest tight, my throat dry. The heat from the flames washed over us, the air thick with smoke and salt. The sound of the cables snapping echoed like gunfire. Each crack another nail in the coffin of escape. A man beside me whispered. It's over. No one argued. The military had tried to hold it. I could see their wreckage. Humvees overturned. Sandbags scattered. Rifles abandoned. Their bodies lay among the cars. Their uniforms scorched. Their helmets cracked. They had fought, but the bridge had fallen anyway. The infected were there, too, their silhouettes jerking in the firelight. They stumbled across the span, their moans rising above the roar of the flames. Some fell into the water, their bodies hissing as they sank. Others pressed forward, relentless, their hunger stronger than fire. I gripped my revolver, my hands trembling. 6 bullets. Always 6. But what good were 6 bullets against a city on fire? The crowd began to scatter, their voices rising in panic. Some fled east toward the hills. Others dropped to their knees, praying, their words lost in the roar. A few waded into the bay, their arms flailing, their cries desperate. The water swallowed them quickly. I stayed. I couldn't look away. The bridge groaned, its steel twisting, its towers leaning. The fire consumed it, the smoke rising higher, blotting out the stars. And then, with a sound like thunder, the center span collapsed. It fell into the bay, a wall of fire and steel crashing into the water. Waves surged outward, slamming against the shore, drenching the survivors in salt and ash. The sound echoed across the city, a final death knell. The Golden Gate was gone. The crowd wailed, their voices breaking. Some clung to each other, others fled into the night. I stood frozen, my chest heaving, my eyes burning. The bridge had been the last symbol of escape, the last thread of hope, and now it was ash. I thought of Ranger Harper, his warning. Don't trust walls. He had been right. The bridge had been a wall, too. A promise of safety, of escape. And like every wall, it had fallen. The fire burned through the night, the towers glowing like torches, the smoke curling into the sky. The city was sealed now, cut off, trapped. San Francisco was no longer a city. It was a grave. And I was still inside it. The Golden Gate was gone. The city was sealed, burning behind me, its towers glowing like funeral PS. There was only one way left, east. I followed the signs for Interstate 80, the road that once carried commuters and tourists out of San Francisco. Now it was a graveyard. The highway was choked with cars bumper to bumper, stretching as far as I could see. Doors hung open, windshields shattered, trunks stuffed with belongings that would never reach their destination. Some cars still held their passengers, bodies slumped in seats, seatbelts cutting across lifeless chests. The smell was suffocating, a mix of gasoline, rot, and salt carried on the wind. I climbed over hoods and trunks, my boots slipping on glass. Each step echoed in the silence, broken only by the distant caw of crows circling above. Their wings beat heavy, their cries sharp as they picked at the remains left behind. I passed a minivan, its windows fogged from the inside. My flashlight beam cut through the glass, revealing a family still strapped in their seats. The father's hands gripped the wheel, his knuckles white even in death. The mother's head rested against the window, her eyes clouded. 2 children sat in the back, their toys scattered on the floor. I turned away quickly, bile rising in my throat. The highway stretched on, a river of steel and silence. I thought of all the people who had tried to flee, who had believed the road would carry them to safety. Instead, it had carried them here to this. I moved carefully, my revolver heavy at my side. 6 bullets, always 6. The infected could be anywhere, hiding in the cars, waiting in the shadows. Every creak of metal, every flutter of wings made my heart race. Then I heard it. A faint thud followed by a low moan. I froze, crouching behind a pickup truck. The sound came again, closer this time. I peered over the hood, my breath caught in my throat. They were there, dozens of them, moving slowly between the cars, their bodies jerked, their eyes clouded, their moans rising in unison. Some clawed at the doors, others stumbled aimlessly, their hands dragging along the metal. They had been trapped here, caught in the gridlock. And now the highway was theirs. I pressed myself against the truck, my chest tight. The infected moved closer, their moans echoing across the asphalt. I gripped the revolver, my finger trembling on the trigger. 6 bullets. Not enough. Never enough. I crawled under the truck, the asphalt cold against my skin. The infected shuffled past, their feet dragging inches from my face. I held my breath, my heart pounding so loud I thought they would hear it. One of them stopped, its head jerking, its moan low and guttural. I froze, sweat dripping down my face. After a moment, it moved on, its shadow fading into the fog. When the last of them passed, I crawled out, my hands shaking. I moved quickly, climbing over cars, slipping through gaps, my breath ragged. The highway stretched endless. The infected scattered like landmines across the asphalt. I reached a semi-truck jackknifed across the lanes, its trailer split open. Boxes spilled onto the road, their contents scattered. Canned food, bottled water, supplies meant for someone who never received them. I stuffed what I could into my pack, my hands moving fast, my ears straining for every sound. Then I saw it. A sign half burned, its letters still visible through the smoke. Sacramento, ADM, ADM. It might as well have been 1,000. I stood on the roof of the truck, staring east. The highway stretched into the fog, a river of corpses and steel. Behind me, San Francisco burned. Ahead, the unknown waited. I tightened the straps on my pack, the revolver heavy at my side. 6 bullets, always 6, and I started walking. The highway stretched endless, a graveyard of steel and silence. I had walked for hours, the fog curling low, the crows circling above. My pack was heavier now with scavenged cans and bottles, but my legs felt hollow, my chest tight. Sacramento was still miles away, the sign mocking me with its promise. That's when I heard the engines. Low at first, a distant growl carried on the wind. I froze, crouching behind a rusted sedan, my revolver heavy in my hand. 6 bullets, always 6. The sound grew louder, closer until headlights cut through the fog. A convoy. Trucks battered but running, their engines rumbling, their tires crunching over glass and bone. At the front, a black and white patrol car with a cracked windshield and a sheriff's star still painted on the door. Sheriff Dalton. He stepped out, his boots striking the asphalt, his shotgun slung across his back. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with blood, but his eyes were the same. Hard, unyielding. He looked like a man who had walked through hell and come out the other side. The deputies fanned out, their rifles raised, their movements sharp. They scanned the highway, their voices clipped. Clear left, clear right. Dalton's gaze swept the wreckage, then landed on me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The fog curled between us, the silence heavy. "You're still alive," he said finally, his voice low. I tightened my grip on the revolver. "So are you." He stepped closer, his boots crunching glass. "You should have come with us. North is the only way." I shook my head. "I saw what you did. Back in the marina, the man you shot. The families you left behind." His jaw tightened, but his eyes didn't waver. "Law doesn't bend for feelings. Not anymore. Order is the only thing that keeps us breathing." I wanted to argue, to shout, but the words caught in my throat because part of me knew he was right. Chaos had torn the city apart. Walls had fallen. Barricades had burned. And yet Dalton was still here, still standing, still leading. He studied me for a long moment, then spoke again, his voice quieter. "You think San Francisco was bad? You think the bridge burning was the end? You haven't seen what's inland. My chest tightened. What do you mean? Dalton's eyes darkened. They're changing. The infected out here. They're slow, clumsy, but inland. He trailed off, his jaw clenched. We've seen them move faster, smarter, like they're learning. The words hit me harder than gunfire. Faster, smarter. The thought of it made my stomach twist. Dalton continued, his voice sharp. We lost 2 convoys outside Vacaville. Good men. They didn't just get swarmed, they got hunted. Something's different out there. Something worse. The deputies shifted uneasily, their eyes scanning the fog. One muttered under his breath, they don't stop. They don't sleep. Dalton silenced him with a glance. Then he looked back at me. You've got a choice. Same as before. Come north with us or keep walking east into something you can't fight. The highway was silent, the fog pressing close. Behind me, San Francisco burned. Ahead Sacramento waited, its barricades uncertain, its fate unknown. And here stood Dalton, bloodied but alive, offering law in a world that had none. I thought of Ranger Harper, his warning. Don't trust walls. I thought of the ferry sinking, the Presidio falling, Twin Peaks burning. Every promise of safety had crumbled. And yet Dalton was still here. I lowered the revolver slowly, my hands trembling. If I come with you, I said, what happens when I can't keep up? Dalton's eyes were cold, steady. Then you don't come. The words cut sharp, but they were honest. Brutally honest. The engines rumbled, the headlights cut through the fog. The deputies waited. Dalton stood tall, his badge glinting faintly in the firelight. The sheriff had returned, and with him came a choice I wasn't ready to make. The highway carried me east until the skyline of Sacramento rose through the haze. The towers of the Capitol stood like broken teeth against the sky. Their glass cracked, their flags tattered. For a moment, I thought I'd made it. That beyond the ruins, there might still be order. But order had teeth. The National Guard had barricaded the city. Concrete barriers stretched across the freeway. Razor wire coiled above them. Armored vehicles blocked the lanes, their turrets swiving, their barrels aimed outward. Soldiers in fatigue stood behind the barricades. Their rifles raised, their faces hidden behind gas masks. Floodlights cut through the fog, turning the night into a stage. I wasn't alone. Survivors had gathered at the gates, hundreds of them, their voices rising in desperation. Families clutched children. Men waved makeshift flags. Women screamed for mercy. They pressed against the barriers, their hands clawing at the wire, their cries echoing across the asphalt. Please let us in. We've got kids. We're not sick. The soldiers didn't move. A loudspeaker crackled, the voice sharp and cold. This is a restricted zone. Sacramento is at capacity. No entry. Turn back immediately. The crowd erupted, their voices breaking, some begged, others cursed, their words lost in the roar. A man threw a bottle, shattering against the barrier. The soldiers raised their rifles in unison, the floodlights glaring. I pressed myself against the wreck of a car, my chest tight, my revolver heavy at my side. 6 bullets, always 6. The loudspeaker crackled again. Turn back or we will open fire. The crowd didn't move. They couldn't. Behind us, the infected moaned, their shadows jerking closer through the fog. They had followed the sound, the smell, the chaos. Their moans rose guttural and hungry, echoing across the freeway. The survivors panicked, trapped between the barricade and the dead. They surged forward, slamming against the wire, their screams rising. The soldiers shouted, their rifles rattling, the floodlights blinding. Then the first shot rang out. A soldier fired into the crowd. the crack echoing like thunder. A man fell, blood pooling on the asphalt. The crowd screamed, surging harder, their voices breaking. The soldiers fired again, muzzle flashes lighting the night. Chaos erupted. The infected slammed into the rear of the crowd, dragging people down, tearing into flesh. Survivors screamed, clawing at the wire, their hands shredded by the razor coils. The soldiers fired into the mass, bullets tearing through infected and civilians alike. I dropped to the ground, crawling beneath a truck, my breath ragged, the screams were deafening, the gunfire relentless, the moans rising. The freeway became a slaughterhouse, blood pooling, bodies falling, the air thick with smoke and salt. Through the chaos, I saw Dalton. The sheriff stood tall, his shotgun raised, his deputies firing in bursts. He shouted orders, his voice sharp, cutting through the noise. Hold the line. Push through. But there was no line. No order. Only death. The barricade held. The soldiers unyielding, their rifles spitting fire. The crowd broke, scattering into the night, their screams fading into the fog. The infected pressed forward, their moans echoing, their bodies piling against the wire. I crawled out from under the truck, my chest heaving, my hands shaking. The freeway was littered with bodies, the air thick with smoke. The soldiers stood behind their barricade, their faces hidden, their rifles steady. Sacramento was closed. The capital had sealed itself, its walls unbreakable, its gates shut, and outside we were left to die. I stumbled into the fog, my revolver heavy, my pack digging into my shoulders. Behind me, the gunfire echoed, the screams fading. Ahead, the highway stretched into darkness. The unknown waiting. Sacramento had been the last promise. And it was gone. After Sacramento turned us away in blood and gunfire, the survivors scattered like leaves in the wind. I followed the sheriff's convoy north for a time, but the weight of his law pressed too heavy on me. His deputies barked orders, their rifles always raised, their eyes always watching. I slipped away in the night, following the broken road east until the fog thinned and the sound of engines faded. That's when I found the airfield. It lay just beyond the city's edge, a forgotten strip of cracked asphalt surrounded by chain-link fence. The sign at the gate was rusted, its letters faded. Executive Air Park. The control tower leaned against the sky. Its windows shattered, its stairs half collapsed. Hangars stood silent, their doors yawning open, their insides dark. I pushed through the gate, my boots crunching gravel, my revolver heavy at my side. 6 bullets, always 6. The air smelled of oil and dust. The silence broken only by the creak of metal in the wind. Inside the first hangar, I found them. Planes, small single-engine craft, their wings coated in dust, their tires flat. Some were stripped for parts, their panels torn away, their cockpits gutted. But one still looked whole, its paint was chipped, its propeller bent, but the fuselage was intact. For a moment, I let myself imagine it. The engine roaring to life, the wheels lifting from the cracked runway, the city shrinking below. Escape, freedom, the sky as sanctuary. But dreams are dangerous. I climbed into the cockpit, my hands trembling, the controls were foreign, the dials cracked, the switches stiff. I had never flown a plane. I didn't even know where to begin. The manuals were gone, the fuel tanks dry. The dream crumbled as quickly as it came. That's when I heard the voices, faint at first, drifting through the hangar. Survivors, a group of them moving cautiously, their flashlights cutting through the dark. I ducked low, peering through the cracked glass. They were armed, shotguns, pistols, makeshift spears. Their faces were gaunt, their eyes hollow. They spoke in whispers. Their words sharp. Fuel's gone. Check the tower. Keep quiet. They'll hear us. I stayed hidden. My breath shallow. They moved through the hangar, searching, scavenging, their flashlights sweeping across the plains. One of them paused near mine, his hand brushing the fuselage. For a moment, I thought he'd see me, but then he moved on, his voice low. Even if we get one running, who flies it? No one answered. They left as quickly as they came, their footsteps fading into the night. I waited until the silence returned, then slipped from the cockpit, my chest tight. The control tower loomed above, its stairs groaning under my weight. At the top, the view stretched wide. The runway cracked and broken, the hangars dark, the city's glow faint in the distance. The radio equipment was shattered, its wires torn, its dials smashed. Another dead end. I sat in the chair, staring out at the runway. The dream of flight had been a lie. The planes were bones. The airfield a grave. Then the moans came. Low at first, then louder, rising from the fence line. The infected, drawn by the voices, the movement, the scent of life. They pressed against the chain link, their hands clawing, their teeth snapping. The fence rattled, the posts groaning. I scrambled down the stairs, my boots slipping, my breath ragged. The infected swarmed the runway, their shadows jerking in the moonlight. I ran for the hangar, my revolver shaking in my hand. 6 bullets, always 6. I fired once, the shot echoing across the airfield. An infected dropped, its body twitching. The others moaned louder, their hands slamming against the metal. The airfield was no sanctuary. It was a trap. I fled through the gate, the moans chasing me into the night. Behind me, the planes sat silent, their wings broken, their engines dead. The dream of escape had burned away, leaving only the road. Dot. The sky would not save us. Dot. Not anymore. The airfield had been a lie. The planes were bones, the sky a grave. I left it behind, the moans of the infected still echoing in my ears, and followed the road east. The fog pressed close. The silence heavy until I found a gas station half collapsed on the side of the highway. Inside the shelves were bare, the windows shattered, the floor littered with cans and wrappers. But in the corner behind the counter, I saw it. A radio. It was old, its casing cracked, its dials worn smooth. But when I turned the knob, the speaker hissed to life. Static filled the room, sharp and endless, like the sound of the ocean trapped in a box. I sat on the floor, my revolver beside me, my pack against the wall. 6 bullets, always 6. I leaned close, my ears straining. At first, it was just noise, a hiss, a crackle, the faint hum of dead air, but then something shifted. The static bent. A faint rhythm pulsed through it like a heartbeat buried in the noise. Then a voice low and broken, whispering through the crackle. "We're waiting." My chest tightened. I turned the dial slowly, the static rising and falling, the voice flickering in and out. "North hold. Waiting." It was the same voice I'd heard from Sutro Tower. Faint, distorted, but real. I pressed the microphone button, my hands trembling. "This is San Francisco, day 30. I hear you. Please, where are you?" The static roared, swallowing my words, then faintly. "Not alone. Come north." The signal cut, the hiss returning sharp and merciless. I slammed the button again, shouting into the void. "Repeat, please repeat. Who are you? Where are you?" The static bent again, the voice breaking through, but this time it was different. "We see you." I froze, my breath caught in my throat. "We're waiting." The words were clearer now, sharper, deliberate. Not a plea, a promise. I dropped the microphone, my hands shaking, the radio hissed, the static pulsing like a heartbeat. The voice came again, low and steady. "Don't run." The gas station felt smaller, the walls pressing in. I grabbed my revolver, my finger trembling on the trigger. 6 bullets, always 6. The static roared, the voice rising above it. "North, waiting, watching. I yanked the cord from the wall, the radio falling silent. The hiss died, the room plunging into stillness. My breath came fast, ragged, my chest tight, but the silence didn't last. From outside, I heard it. A moan, low, guttural, rising from the fog, then another, and another. They were close. I stuffed the revolver into my belt, grabbed my pack, and slipped out the back door. The fog curled thick, the night heavy. Shadows moved between the cars, their moans echoing. The infected had found me. I ran, my boots pounding the asphalt, my breath tearing at my throat. The moans grew louder, closer, the fog alive with movement. I didn't look back. The radio's words echoed in my head. We see you. We're waiting. It hadn't been hope. It hadn't been rescue. It had been a trap. The gas station was behind me. The radio's hiss still in my ears. We see you. We're waiting. The words clung to me like smoke. I walked east until the road bent toward the hills, until the fog thinned enough to reveal a radio tower smaller than Sutro, but still standing, its red light blinking faintly against the night. I don't know why I climbed it. Maybe because I needed to believe my voice could still matter. Maybe because silence was worse than death. The ladder groaned under my weight. The steel cold against my hands. The city stretched behind me, a smear of fire on the horizon. Ahead, the dark hills rolled endless, the highway a vein of broken glass. I climbed until the wind cut sharp, until the ground was a blur beneath me. At the top, the shack was half collapsed, its equipment rusted, its windows shattered, but the console still hummed faintly, a low vibration that thrummed through the floor. I sat in the chair, my revolver beside me. 6 bullets, always 6. I pressed the button, the red bulb flickering weakly. This is day 31, I said, my voice cracking. If anyone can hear me, this might be my last broadcast. The static hissed, sharp and endless. I've seen the city burn. I've seen the bridges fall. I've seen the Presidio collapse, the sheriff vanish, the airfield rot. I've seen hope turn to ash. But I'm still here, still breathing, still fighting. The wind howled through the broken glass, the static roaring in my ears. If you're out there, if anyone is out there, you're not alone. I don't know how much longer I can keep moving. I don't know if there's anywhere left to go, but I need you to know this. We lived. We fought. We didn't go quietly. I let go of the button. The silence pressing in. For a moment, I thought it was over. Just another voice lost in the void. Then the static shifted. We hear you. My chest tightened. The voice was faint, broken, but real. Keep talking. I pressed the button again, my hands trembling. Who are you? Where are you? The static roared, the voice flickering in and out. North, waiting, watching. The words cut sharp, deliberate. Not a plea, not a promise. A warning. I dropped the microphone, my breath ragged, the static pulsed like a heartbeat, the voice rising again. Don't stop. We're coming. The wind howled. The tower groaned. The static hissed. I grabbed the revolver, my finger trembling on the trigger. 6 bullets. Always 6. The voice grew louder, clearer, filling the shack. We see you. We're close. I stumbled back, my chest heaving, my eyes wide, the static roared, the voice breaking into laughter, low, guttural, endless. I pressed the button one last time, my voice shaking. If anyone else can hear this, don't come here. Don't follow the signal. It's not rescue. It's not hope. It's them. The laughter rose, echoing through the static, filling the night. I dropped the microphone, the red bulb flickering, the console humming. The wind tore through the shack, the tower swaying. I sat in the chair, the revolver heavy in my hand, the static roaring in my ears. 6 bullets, always 6, the voice whispered one last time, low and steady. We're here. And then the signal died. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams.